Good morning. My name is Joanne, and I'm grateful to be here to share my testimony. I was born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in the USA. I'm number 2 of 4 girls. My parents were Christians who attended and served in the Mennonite church. It's an evangelistical church with strong conservative values that emphasize nonconformity to the world. This meant that there was no TV, no movies. Women were not allowed to wear pants or wear jewelry or makeup. These strong family values provided a good foundation for the rest of my life. When I was 10 years old, during a revival service, I raised my hand to accept Jesus during the second verse of Just As I Am, without one plea. The following year, in grade 6, I was baptized by the pouring and became a member of the Mennonite church. In the end of my 5th grade year, my family moved from a small town to a small farm that was my grandfather's. Living on the farm required every morning before school, getting up, going to the barn, and every evening after dinner, going to the barn again and feeding the animals like the calves and the goats and etc. And then the summertime, our school holidays were often spent working in the garden and canning and preserving the fruits and vegetables for the winter season. After graduating from high school, I served as an assistant cook in a youth camp located in northern Pennsylvania. My first weekend away from home, I stayed with my second cousin, who was responsible for taking the guest speaker of a women's conference to the bus station. I accompanied her while waiting in the van for her bus at 9:30 p.m. During this time, she turned to me and says, "Do you have the baptism in the Holy Spirit?" I said, "No, I'm scared." And as the result was because I was resisting it, because I thought if I accepted the baptism in the Holy Spirit and spoke in tongues, God would make me do things I didn't want to do. So she prayed, and there outside in the van, outside a movie theater at night, I spoke in tongues and was baptized in the Holy Spirit. So it doesn't matter where you are or how it happens, God can touch you. The following year at 19, I returned to the camp as head cook, and in the fall, after the summer season was over, I was invited to cook at a children's home that was 10 miles down the road. During this time, I started attending a Pentecostal church that my cousin went to, and a couple years later was baptized by immersion. I needed direction for an important decision that I was going to make concerning my job. In cell group, I asked my cell group leader to pray for me. And after he did, he got 2 words, only 2 words, Glory Road. Well, a few weeks later, the senior pastor of my church mentioned to me that a couple of my friends were going to a Bible school that was in the midst of revival. The name of the Bible school was Shekinah, located on Glory Road in Tennessee. Needless to say, 3 weeks later, I was on my way to a 3-year Bible school. Between the 2nd and 3rd year of school, God spoke to me. I was alone in the house, and suddenly I heard a voice. Your life is no longer your own. Up until now, you have chosen your path, but now I want to take over. I went to the patio. I'm not very humble, though. My response is, Lord, if that's the case, I don't want to fizzle out. I want to be great. And the Lord responded back and says, then learn to be the servant. I wondered if I was crazy and just hearing things. That night in the evening service, I went to the guest speaker, stated that my title of my message is different. Tonight, my title is, I want to be great, learn to be the servant. I was like, I guess that was you, Lord. All the things that I thought that might not be true, might be true. After graduation from Bible school, what to do? My pastor was now a chancellor of a new Bible school in Waverly, New York, and he wanted me to go there and be the head cook. The people at the school says, you can't go there. You need to go to ministry, and offered me a job there. I also felt a call to missions. What shall I do? Well, I knew that I had to listened to my pastor, and I went back to cook at Zion Ministerial Institute in Waverly, New York. The first year, I found myself very discontented. Many times I would walk up the steps to my dorm room saying, Lord, is this all you have for me? Washing pots and pans and cooking? I didn't go to school for all this. What's all this? But towards the end of my second year, I remember one particular evening while going up the steps to my room and saying, Lord, if this is what you have for me the rest of my life, I am happy and I will serve you. Something changed. It was my attitude. I had now come to the place of being able to lay everything before the Lord at the altar and at the same time faithfully serve in whatever I was currently doing. At the end of the third year, God opened the door for me to go to India. In September of 1987, I left the USA for India and worked with a missionary family in Kodaikanal, Tamil Nadu. I did whatever I was asked to do, including cooking, watching the children, conducting small ladies' meetings, and helping in the church. Looking back, I see that it was preparation for what God had for me in the future. It was during this time that Tim and I began exchanging letters. It's called snail mail. We had noticed each other the year before in 1986. During my first furlough in January of 1989, Tim asked me to marry him, and I said yes. I returned to India for another 3 months, and soon after my return, we were married in September of 1989. After marriage, we helped in the local church in Erie, Pennsylvania, where Tim was a member. For the next 3 years, we served in the church in various ministries. I was a Sunday school teacher, and Tim was the worship leader and also an assistant to the pastor. After marriage, in 1992, we went to Waverly, New York, where Tim attended Bible school in preparation for the mission field. In June of 1993, we left for Africa. The following year, we went to India and served there in the state of Odisha from 1994 to 2002, where we oversaw 2 Bible schools and 2 orphanages. During our time in India, we had to exit the country every 6 months due to our visas. We often traveled to the neighboring Asian countries, one of which was Singapore. In September of 1998, while in the U.S., we went to the convention in Waverly, New York. One evening, the testifier started naming different countries that he was helping in. When Singapore was mentioned, tears just started to flow. I didn't know where they came from or how they got there. I didn't know what was happening. At the end of the service, the main speaker said, if God has laid countries on people's hearts, please come to the altar. Tim saw what was happening and said, we better go. I didn't know, because I was happy in India. And what's all this about? Upon returning to India, everything sort of seemed normal until I got the receipts from Singapore out to do for U.S. tax purposes, and it started again. It's like, Lord, what's happening? During our next visit to Singapore, something changed. My desire went from, I can't wait to get out of here, I want to go back to India, I can't stand it, to I love it. And I wanted to stay as long as I possibly could. But at this time, there were no open doors, and we were happy in India. On February of 2002, we had to leave India short notice. It was a difficult period. A door even suddenly opened up for us to be in Singapore, but in a matter of 6 hours, that door closed. The president of our home fellowship wanted Tim to come back to the headquarters in the USA and help in the school there. My dreams suddenly died, and I just had to give them to the Lord. In 2004, the door opened for us to return to Singapore, and we went to serve in Cornerstone Church in addition to assisting the church in India alongside of corresponding Bible schools and throughout the nation. So I had the best of both things, India and Singapore for a while. So we have been in Singapore since 2004. Throughout the years, I learned that when God speaks, his timing may not always be ours. But if he speaks, he will be true. He doesn't lie, and he doesn't tease us. In the year 2020, our visa status was very much in doubt, and the possibility of even having to leave Singapore came. During that time, God had spoke to me that I am never too late, that God was never too late. And oftentimes, as it came down to a few weeks, even days before everything would change, I wondered. But God was always true, and he kept his word, and our visas were granted. And we're still here. God never wastes any situation and builds upon what he teaches. One example was when I served with the family in India before I was married. It was actually preparation for when God would send Tim and I to India. I knew how to handle things and what to do. I also discovered that during the difficult situations is often when God reveals his name to you. For example, if you look in scriptures, Jehovah Rapha, Jehovah Nisi, Jehovah Jireh, they're all when the people were walking through a trial. Speaking of Jehovah Nisi, in the year of 2018, the Lord led Tim and I to Lighthouse Evangelism. Words cannot express our appreciation to Pastor Pacer and the leaders and staff at Lighthouse and the Lighthouse family for making us feel so much at home. I am grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity to also serve in both Touchlight and Sparklight ministries. I would like to conclude by saying that God is faithful, and if God speaks, he will do it. So if you're in a difficult place, if you don't know why you're in the situation you're in today, just be faithful to what God is doing. God always builds upon what he does, and it may well be preparation for the next step that God has planned in your life. And the day will come that you will see what God did in this difficult time. Thank you very much.